Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create a posable hand in Nomad Sculpt. Starting off in a new scene, we're going to use the sphere to create the palm area of the hand, and we're just going to fit this sphere, the edges of the sphere, to the 4 points that are indicated, and then we're going to trim down the sides of the sphere. I do it this way because I have a lot more control in how the shapes come out. Like I could use a tube tool and just byline it, but doing this way gives you a lot more control of the shape. Once you do that, don't forget to save this view as the front view, and then we're going to move on to the side view, and we're going to also move the object to fit the points of our reference, and we're going to trim that as well. Save this view as right view or front view. It's just the view where you see the thumb and the pointer finger. And then after we finish this one, we're going to go ahead and create the back view or the left view, which is where you just see mostly the pinky and the side of the hand. We're going to make sure that the object fits within the rectangular shape for the palm there as well, and then we're going to go ahead and save this view. Make sure you save your views throughout so that you can go through each view and just making sure that each point or each element that you add fits proportionately. Now I am creating the spheres or the joints that's connected between the fingers and the palm, and what I'm doing is just sizing the sphere down, and I will go on to move to other views to make sure that the joint is in the right place, and then after that I duplicate or clone the joint and move it over until I create all 4 joints. Once I match up all the joints for the fingers, the first pair of joints, I'm going to go ahead and add a cylinder, which will be the first part of that cylinder shape you see after that joint. Then I'll do the same thing I did with the joints, the first row of joints, and I'll just duplicate this cylinder and rotate or resize it to match the cylinders in the reference. Make sure to go back and forth between your references. I did at some point notice that the palm for the back reference or the back view was a little bit too big, so I do end up mostly relying on the front view of the hand and then also the right view of the hand, and making sure that the pinky and the cylinders fit not perfectly. It's not going to be absolutely perfect, but you want it to be as close as possible and the proportions to be as close as possible. Also, another point that I want to make out or point out is that I do go into each cylinder and I make the radius of the cylinder the same radius as the joints that we created first. So we're doing the same thing that we did before. We're just cloning the cylinder, moving it over and fitting it to the reference in the background. For the second row of joints, we're just cloning the first row of joints, moving them down, and then resizing them to fit in the reference. Don't really mind that one of the parts of the finger, the pointer finger or the index finger, the cylinder, the bottom radius of that cylinder is wider. That's just me testing out if it would be different or would make a difference. In the end, I figured out that it really doesn't make a difference, and you don't really have to make the radius of both ends of the cylinder different, wider, or smaller. It doesn't really make that much of a change. You can leave the cylinder as is, or you could widen one side of the radius. Once done with the cylinders or the second row of cylinders, we're going to go and make the third row of joints. And we're going to do the same thing we did before, duplicate the spheres and then match the joints or the size of the spheres to the joints indicated in your reference. For the tips of the fingers, instead of cloning the cylinders that we have, we're going to add a new cylinder, and we're going to go into the primitive settings, and we're going to adjust the settings so that the cylinder edges are curved. The first thing we're going to do is post subdivision, turn it up to 4 or 5. And then after that, we're going to turn down the topology to 12 so that your fingers are curved or the tips are curved. So it's like less work in the end, pretty much. Then we're going to clone that shape we just created and we're going to adjust it to the tips of the rest of the fingers and make sure we go back and forth between each view and make sure the fingers fit properly to the reference. Once that is complete, this is what it should look like so far with your 4 fingers completed. After your 4 fingers are completed, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start the thumb. For the thumb, we're going to add a sphere and we're going to resize it to fit the radius of the sphere in the reference. And we're going to move it up so that it fits in that same area. The thumb does not, if you want it to just go straight beside the hand, it could be, but I'm going to have the thumb up a little bit more. So I do move that joint, that first joint of the thumb forward, and I will use that as my guide and where my thumb will be going. I am cloning this sphere and I am resizing it to fit the second joint in the thumb. The joints are where the 3 parts, they're called phalanges, meet in the finger. In the thumb's case, there's 2. So when you're moving or adjusting this hand, you're going to want to select the joint at the bottom of each phalange with the cylinder, and you're going to move that. So for example, when you're moving the index finger, you select the entire finger, including the joint touching the palm, you move that, and then you would deselect the joint and the proximal, which is the first joint close, or not the first joint, but the bone closest to your palm. You'll deselect those two, and then you'll go ahead and just move those joints, and so on and so forth. So for the thumb, I added a new cylinder, and for the thumb, I actually do recommend making one of the radiuses larger or smaller, depending which way you do it, so that the phalange, I'm going to call it phalange from now on, the proximal phalange matches the first knuckle of the thumb. The fingers are made up of 3 bones. The bones that are closer to the palm, these are called proximals. And then you have your middle, and then the tips of your fingers is the 3rd bone, which is called the distal. The thumb only has the proximal and the distal because there's only 2 bones in your thumb that are moving and there isn't a middle phalange. For the distal of the thumb or the tip of the thumb, we're going to do the same thing we did before with the cylinder, and we're going to round out those edges so it's like one step. Once again said that you don't really have to necessarily do. All you gotta do is smooth it out in the end, and you'll get that thumb shape. To connect the thumb to the palm, we're going to insert another cylinder or clone the one that's already there, and you're simply going just to connect the thumb to the hand. You're going to use the move tool to fit that cylinder in there. It's like a little flat piece that just connects the hand to the or the thumb to the hand. You can use it to also create the that thumb area inside the palm that's a little thicker. You can use the cylinder for that as well, but we're just making the cylinder wider and we're rounding it out a little bit so that it comes around and creates that space between your thumb and your palm. This is what it should look like, sort of like this like an organic shape. a curved cylinder, and to make sure that this element fits, I go between each view and I adjust it until it looks about the same or similar to the reference. I also look at my own hands. I look at references as well, just to make sure that I'm getting the pieces where they should be. We're going to use the move tool to pull down that little slim piece of skin between your thumb and your palm. This is what you should have so far. You can already see like it has like that hand structure, and I really like this technique because when you do join all these elements, once you move or shift your joints in your fingers, once you join all these elements together, all you would need to do is remesh it and then smooth it out, and your hand is like instantly created. This technique is really good. Now we're adding the wrist. We're just adding another sphere, and we're matching the radius of the sphere to the radius of the circle in the reference. In the right view, we're going to pinch that circle just slightly, not too much, because your wrist is not a complete circle. When you do turn it to the side, it's actually thinner than it is width wise. Now I'm going to be adding the wrist. This is not completely necessary. The wrist will most likely be there when you do create your full body. make any necessary changes you would like in your hand. You don't necessarily have to mess with the wrist too much because it is just another sort of like joint or connection area where you're going to be using it to shift or turn the wrist when your hand is bended. Your posable hand should look somewhat like this, similar to this. Please let me know how this turned out for you. Also, I would be making a video on moving these specific joints and talking a little bit more about that. Please don't forget to leave a comment below. Let me know how it works out. Please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and I will see you next video.